In this video, I'm gonna be teaching Dad how to make his first ever sheath. To start out with, I like to make a good pattern. Gonna draw around the guard there and draw around the blade. And now we're just gonna connect the dots. So the wheel does a pretty good job of leaving nice, smooth, flowing cuts compared to scissors or using just a razor blade.
That looks a lot like the blade.
So now we need to make a belt loop, separate piece. So we'll do something like that. So we wanna leave plenty of room for our stitching to not interfere with this. It's gonna go up to about half the handle height, maybe a little bit over. The more of this you have sticking up, of course, the lower it's gonna hang, but also this belt loop will start to get more and more flexible the longer it is. All right, so we'll just start marking out patterns. We need 2 right-hand pieces and 2 left-hand. We're gonna really live by this pattern quite a bit. So this is gonna take a minute. So now we just go to town, start cutting. Not applying a ton of pressure, just enough so it'll cut a little ribbon out. And that's where our stitching will go. Next thing we need to do is figure out where the tooling will go. I'm just gonna move it over a little bit, leave a little gap between the stitching and where the tooling stops. In order for us to do tooling, we need to moisten down the leather, but it can't be too much, it can't be too little. So I think I'm gonna just start it right there. We'll go ahead and do the surrounding marks as well, just in case I can't quite get to them later. We can go ahead and get our thumb stud in there. Frog? Thumb stud? Why do I keep saying thumb stud? I'm gonna drill a hole for the frog. There's our frog. Now we need to put contact cement on both of these pieces, let it dry a little bit, and then stick both of them together. Then we can go in, wet down the rest of this, and do all of our tooling we're gonna do. The amount of water is pretty critical. I couldn't tell you exactly how much to do. I always go by like a feeling. That felt like enough. I'm serious, it is a feeling. Too much is bad, too little is bad. Too little is better than too much though, because you can put more on. I don't know how deep I want to go. Not used to this 2-layer thing. One of the first things we need to do is get these belt loop pieces glued to each other. So we use barge cement and we need to put it on and let it dry until it's just tacky. And you can just set them aside and let them dry, or if you need to, you can expedite it with a hairdryer a little bit. I'm gonna get every single area covered all the way to the very edge. It'll probably take 5 to 10 minutes or so. Once you get going with this, there's not really any going back. Pressure really makes this stuff stick together permanently, so if you're doing it real gentle on your layout, then you might be okay to move it a little bit if something's off. But get it all laid out really well, press it down, make sure the surface is clean, and we're gonna lightly tap on the entire surface with a hammer. And that'll really bond the contact cement to itself and give us a nice solid hold. We'll try not to leave nasty marks from the hammer in the leather. That's nice and stiff now compared to one layer by itself. Next thing we need to do is actually clean up the edges, specifically this top edge on the back of the sheath and all the edges on the belt loop part of the sheath. So to do that, we're over at the grinder with a worn out 320 grit belt, and I'm gonna get the edge of the leather wet, and then we'll just start kind of burnishing and cleaning up the edges with the belt grinder. I'm gonna lightly mark around it. I'm gonna score the leather inside the marked out area. It really likes to stick to a rough surface. Need to be really careful about our application of said glue at this point though, because we gotta put it in that little square and this brush isn't real great at doing that. Let's glue this belt loop on here. We want to get it nice and square. Get it right on the marks. Hammer time. I'm just going to start at a corner and go up. We want to get some nice deep divots because it'll help direct the drill bit. So what we're gonna do is just go, our stitch is coming out of this hole, so we're just gonna go into the very next hole, pull it through the other side, and then go through the very next hole.
Okay.
Careful not to stab yourself or cut yourself. We're doing a heavy duty saddle stitch for the perimeter of the sheath, so I'm using 3 out of the 5 strands of string that come on the string I'm using. 5 strands is too much, 3 is just right. So I'm just gonna go to the next hole. We're using 2 needles, 1 needle on each end of the string. Pull the string through, and then we just go to the next hole. I like to do about 2 stitches and then pull it tight. So now I'm using the other needle. We're just going to the next hole, pull it through, and then we'll go to the next hole. And that basically fills in every available spot. Every hole gets both needles going through it when we do it this way. And once you pull that through, grab both ends of the string, and pull it tight. All the stitching's done, and you want to go over it with your stitch marker again to lay the stitching down and make it look a lot nicer. If you see right here in this section, I haven't done it yet, and over here I've already done it. You can see how rough this section is. It's got like some wax squishing out and the threads aren't really seated properly. But when you go over it with the stitch marker, it's also one of my absolute favorite parts of making a sheath. It just magically makes your stitches look like $1,000,000. Just that quickly. Kind of clean some of that excess wax off there. The next thing we need to do is make a strap to hold the blade in, hold the knife in. Bend it around, and then I'm gonna make a little indent. I'm gonna be able to pop it on there and pop it off without deforming the leather too much. You could be riding on your horse upside down, and you're definitely not gonna lose your knife falling out of the sheath anyway. So now we need to clean up the shape a little bit and get this piece, get the edges all smoothed up on it and everything. It's probably the nicest little tip I've ever done on one of these. Next thing we need to do on the sheath is take it over to the grinder, and with like a 120 grit belt, we're going to smooth up all these different layers that are at different levels and get it all smoothed up and even. And we're also gonna put a pretty aggressive dome on the edge of the sheath, and that'll make the sheath look even skinnier than it is. It'll really help slim it down as far as the looks, and it'll also make it look not as wide as it is and just make it overall look a lot better. The sheath's been drying overnight, as well as the strap to hold the knife in the sheath securely, and it should be good to go for the final finish coats. I normally like to do 2 to maybe 3 finish coats, but 2's a really good one to go with. I like this Wyo sheen. It leaves a really nice kind of little bit glossy finish, but not super shiny. I don't want it to look like it's like polished plastic or something. Try to get inside the belt loop, get the edges of the belt loop. Go ahead and do the back while I'm here. Get a little bit more up inside of there. We can just go to town on the rest of the sheath now. Some on that little tip area, quite a bit on the edge. Do the other edge really well. And go back over the front again, a little bit more on there. And maybe hit the edge one more time as well. Not forgetting that little bit of a tip there. Let me get this side. Okay, there we go. So I need to get this cleaned out. I like to use a little bit of acetone. Just put some acetone in there and a Q-tip and kind of swirl it around and then spray some acetone out of the gun itself. And a lot of times I'll have to take it apart right before I use it again next time and clean off a little bit of leftover residue that kind of caked up in there, but it normally only takes like 2 minutes, so that's normally how I clean it. I don't fully disassemble it or anything. Take them inside, let them dry for probably at least 2 hours or so, and then you can apply one more finish and then they're done. And that's how I would go about making a clean, simple, but yet elegant sheath for like a small buoy or a hunter or a small fighter. I wanted to go through this entire process and show Dad exactly how to do it, because he's gonna do his first ever sheath now on a small, really nice hunter that he made. If you want to add a lot more complexity to your sheath, you can cover the front and back in exotic skins, or cut out windows in the front and back of the sheath and like have exotic skin inlays or overlays or all sorts of different things you can do. You can also add in more complex tooling or different things like that. For this one though, since it's Dad's first sheath, I just wanted clean, simple, and yet elegant. I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye.